Okay, we're gonna get things going. I'm just promoting your band or musical project or venue or whatever you're promoting. Workshop. It's part of our Caravan du Nord. Want to thank again Austin Area Arts for hosting us here at the Paramount Annex. And thank you guys for
You are moderating this time, right?
No.
Because I'm
okay, apparently I'm moderating. I was trying to pass off those duties.
No, I can be a panel member here.
Okay, that's true. He does know about promoting music. So again, my name is Stanley. I work with the Minnesota Music Coalition. I also used to be a full-time publicist for Red House Records, a Grammy-winning Americana roots label from St. Paul.
One of the finest record labels in Minnesota.
I agree. And that's actually one of the reasons I moved to Minnesota in the first place. I am a transplant as well. And yeah, so I've also have promoted my own music as well, less successfully than promoting other people's because it's a hard prospect. So I feel you if you are one of those people. Yeah, and so we're going to talk about that, and we'll have these folks introduce themselves and say what side of the promoting they've been on.
Yeah, have I ever promoted anything? Only this organization, I guess, and the current, I guess. But no, I've been on the other side of it, being promoted by other people. A lot. And I've got no secret. There's no secret. I could probably tell you more stories about what not to do rather than what to do. So.
And how long have you been working in radio, Mark?
Yeah, I assume all you guys know who I am right now. I started in New Jersey in 1988 on WFMU, and that was
great radio station.
Yes, non-profit, listener supported, totally listener supported, no underwriting, no nothing. And they taught me how to push the buttons. But when I came here in '92, just after the big Halloween snowstorm, I was remember coming and seeing all the snow in February, and I said, when did that fall? And they said Halloween, and I was like, oh my God. As an Englishman, that was a crazy idea. So I came here and immediately went to KFAI because I knew of that radio station from being in New Jersey, and I knew that's what I wanted to keep doing. And obviously it was all volunteer to start with. And I started, that's another long story, but I ended up doing the local show. How about that? The Brit comes to Minnesota and ends up doing the local show on KFAI. You know, West Bank, like roots radio station you could possibly get, where they speak like 18 languages throughout the weekend.
Still do, yeah.
And I ended up doing local sound department for, which is LSD for short. That was just a coincidence. Until '98, I did it for like 7 years. And in '98, I was employed by the University of Minnesota to help run their radio station, Radio K. One of the greatest college radio stations, and I'm not exaggerating here. Industry recognized as being one of the best college stations in the country. So I thought that was a dream job for me back then. I used to tell people because I got to teach kids, which was what I wanted to do when I went to school. And I got to do radio, which was what I always called my hobby. So, you know, that was a dream job, but that's because I couldn't have dreamed the current up 13 years ago. It's literally been more than a dream come true. In 2005, when the current started, I knew people working at Minnesota Public Radio, so I could see how events were unfolding, and was lucky enough to literally be the first DJ they hired, and philosophically one of the founding fathers of the station. So back then, 12 years ago, you know, we had a dream. We kind of have a mission as Minnesota Public Radio, but I don't think any of us could have possibly dreamt how successful the project has been. Everyone throughout the company, the senior management, are kind of amazed by the success of the current. And so are people around the country. You know, we've won best station awards for like 7 out of the last 9 years from our peers. And it's only because we're in Minnesota. I don't think a station like this could have happened anywhere else. It's just all the elements, the strong public radio system, strong music community, and the strong philanthropic tradition, you know. All of that coming together, we just kind of grew out of that organically. We were kind of like, it was almost like a no, I said to him, it's a no-brainer. If you do a station that plays the greats, the canon, and plays new music, and supports the local music scene, this community will support you. And I'm pleased to say that's been the case, you know, so we're, yes, but very
Thanks.
I don't know how that helps in
So a member of the media here, this is important, if you're promoting your band, to know who the media people are.
Be afraid.
Well, yeah, that's the best place to start, because when I was doing KFAI, the way to get played on that station, because it's a volunteer-run radio station, the way to get played is to directly contact the host and listen to it. Listen to the show. You know,
Make
it's
sure it
amazing
fits.
how many times people would be pushing CDs to me, and I said, "Did you hear the last week when I did that?" No, I never listened. You know, well, why should I play your music if you don't listen to my
Especially if
radio
you're a volunteer
station? Especially if
DJ.
you're a volunteer DJ.
I mean, I host a radio show on KFAI, a women's folk and acoustic music show. I get CDs from dude bands all the time, and I'm like, it's in the name, women folk.
Right.
You know, like, it might be an awesome band, and I might love it personally, but I can't play it on my show. So,
Yes.
yeah, doing your
Exactly.
research is
Find out what
giving
the
me help.
trends are. Find out if
Totally.
your music fits. You know, if you're not a woman, it might not fit. Depending on the stipulations, and they, like we were saying with grants, everyone's got their own, you know, parameters. So for the current, for example, you've got to start with a local show, which is 6 o'clock on Sunday nights, and listen to that. Find out what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then make sure you approach them, because they're the right people. Andrea is the host, and she basically feeds everything to the rest of us. Whether it's, she has people helping her listen, you know, we've got interns and volunteers that help her, but she does the majority of the work, so you need to contact her. You know, and I still get CDs sent to me, and it's nice, they write personal messages, they do all the things that we could tell you to do, seriously. Tchotchkes, knowing my name, getting everything right. But if it's pointed at the wrong person, and I used to, because I used to do a local show on KFAI and then Radio K, I did their local show off the record for years. It was almost in my nature to keep doing this. Every time someone sent me something, I would feel like I had to respond. And that was, to be honest, draining, especially when the Current was created, I was shifted away from the local show. I've never done the local show on the Current. And although I play local music as much, if not more, than the other hosts, because that's my liberty and that's the gig list thing. But I'm the wrong person to pitch to. So right there, it's almost like strike one against you if you're pitching to me. And what I try and do to everyone who emails is say that. I say, you got to start with Andrea. You know, I don't and I can't review all the local music we get sent. That's not part of my job. The company doesn't support that. We've got a hierarchy, you know, so in some way, shape or form, find out what that hierarchy is, whether it's KFAI, which shows will play your music, whether it's Radio K, it'll be the 2 students who are hosting the show. And if it's the Caravan, it's Andrea. And every station across the country will have the same people. So
do your research.
So do your research, yeah. But I get paid to yabba, Lydia, so you got to stop me. So tell me stories.
Introduce yourself.
Mark, shut up.
How have you promoted yourself in the past? Has been successful?
Oh, jeez Louise. I've been a musician for 8 years. It was my birthday yesterday, so now it's officially 8 years. Thank you, my dear. I was in a band called Bombadilloos for 7 years, 6 years. And we released a couple of albums and won Best New Bands of 2012. Like, we didn't win it, but we were in it, so we won by being in it. Otherwise, I've just been gigging
Don't
professional.
otherwise I've just
8
been
years?
undermine yourself. Lydia.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
You just had someone in who's dreaming of doing exactly what you just undermined saying.
sorry.
No,
I've been
don't
getting
apologize.
You've sung in lots of
That's exactly
projects
it.
too,
You
so
can't
say all the other
apologize
things
for
you've
that.
participated in.
I'm a true Minnesotan, so I just
Yes.
apologize for even existing. So I've been doing it for 8 years, and the way I've been promoting myself is being that apologetic and just being myself. And you do have to be your own cheerleader. And I was lucky enough to have amazing parents who really, they'd go to the grocery store and be like, you know, my daughter, she's do you hear it? I'll show you a map. Yeah, so they were really great. Yeah, I don't really.
Tell us then one story of your best promotional. What's been the best promotional thing you've ever achieved in your 8-year storied career?
It's probably Baby It's Cold Outside story. Josiah, my boyfriend, and I rewrote Baby It's Cold Outside when we were like just hanging out, just kind of drunk. We were just like, this song kind of sucks. Should we rewrite it? And
Well, back to the second here, because it's just struck me, and I didn't plan too much today, but it just struck me that I thought one of the things that might come up might be, because it's everywhere right now, is the basic sexism and gender inequality that there's been.
Mhm.
And it's been a part of the music industry, unfortunately, just like life.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really interesting now to think that you did this, was this
Last year.
last year?
Yeah, last December.
Because Babe, I don't know if you know the song, but Baby It's Cold Outside could have come across as date rape or worse.
Yeah.
It's a guy
No,
who's, you guys all know
like-
the song, right? So,
And
guy's
so their
telling her,
point
oh, you
was
should
to-
go, stay here.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
point was to rewrite it in a
Very
well, I won't put words in
consensual.
your mouth,
It was just consensual
yes,
and like
consensual.
so like right now what we need to do when it comes to that is kind of like let the women have the power. So we kind of like swung it so it was all in the woman's
Purview to say no.
yeah, like no, and then Josiah's lines are like you reserve the right to say no and stuff like that. Like we had all this kind of really goofy, we so weren't serious about it, but like we swung it so far in my favor, and we didn't even change my lines at all. It was all Josiah's responses, and so we like yeah.
Was that your original take, Lydia? Because I think that's interesting. Did you set out to do it? You just said it was a laugh, which might
It
be
totally
undercut
wasn't.
again. But what did it come from a point of anger? Like this is so messed up. This is like symbolically messed up of how gender.
I think I knew that just from being in the industry in general. Like I've had so many weird experiences, but it wasn't our intention really. It wasn't like we didn't set out to make it like a
Right.
cultural
You didn't
phenomenon.
have a
Like
and say we're going to do something.
no, it was just me and Josiah
It's
literally.
gonna be hard.
I was like at work and no one was there, and then like we started rewriting it, and then later we had a couple beers, and I was like, let's just record it. I think it'd be funny for our friends. And it of course like I knew that it would be like it was on topic. It was just like it was good. But I didn't think that.
So what happened once you recorded it? How did it get? Because for those of you who don't know, this song ended up being covered nationally and internationally on the media.
Yeah.
So it went well beyond your
I
home
had to
recording.
dro-
So
I
how
had
did
to
you
drop
get it
out
up
of
there?
School. Yeah. So it was. We recorded it, and then in the morning it was on The Current, and that is an amazing gift because that made it visible, and then CNN picked it up, and then from CNN it was like
Started with time.
oh, it was Time magazine, and then CNN interviewed us, and then we had People magazine, Vanity Fair, BBC. We interviewed with them twice. CBC, Australia. Someone in Australia emailed me. It was a lot, and then yeah, And then we did Tucker Carlson on Fox.
Wow.
And he really didn't like us. He
Really?
didn't like us at all. Yeah.
So that's something that's kind of interesting because it seems like, there's some projects that, we put our heart and soul into and we we're like, oh, this is like a meaningful record for me, and we spend maybe a year recording it and getting it just so, and then you're like, now I have to promote it. And then there's sometimes these quick songs that you kind of or a whim, or it's a joke, or just in the moment, or super overly topical, and you think, oh, this isn't my best work. And that is sometimes what takes traction. So it's kind of interesting that sometimes some of it is just tapping into what's going on right now.
I
going
think
with it.
what my dad always said my dad was a painter when I was growing up, so he would just be sitting painting beautiful paintings. But he always said, paint your truth or speak your truth. And so when you're doing anything, when it comes to any kind of art, you just have to make sure to you it feels right and honest. And usually the things you feel are right and honest are humanly and just universally true. So you're gonna hit a chord with somebody, and that's usually when it works the best.
That and people will pick it up.
Totally,
People can
totally.
recognize authenticity.
Yeah, that's why Bob Dylan's a thing.
Yeah. Bruce Springsteen, he's
Yeah.
like, the New York Times asked him, what's the secret? And he's like, presence. After all his success, it's all about presence, which I think presence, again, a young yogi, but I think presence is all about maintaining that authenticity. That's what that's talking about.
Yeah.
And as artists, we know it sometimes in the zone, or like he's painting,
Zoning.
that's
Totally.
authentic. You know that within yourself. You just have to find a way to convey that to others.
Absolutely.
And again, there's no secret. But what I wanted to ask is, were you able to monetize this viral success as a promotional?
Yeah, we were. So we got a call from, there's a label in Minnesota called Rock the Cause, and they're a non-profit charity. Yeah, exactly. And the owner of it, his name is Scott Harold. He called and he said, "You have lightning in a bottle. Let's monetize and let's donate it. Let's donate it to charities." And our first thought was we wanted to donate it to women's shelters and sexual violence centers. So we were able to raise $3,000 for some charities. And then another cool thing was we were top on Spotify and top on Billboard. So we were able through that too to just we were able to get ourselves onto people's playlists, so maybe it'll be played again this year and next year and then continue to play.
With the holiday recording.
Exactly, yeah. They have
every year you'll have another.
Yeah, and then so we've been sending it out to charities.
And you attach your other original material, of course.
Well, that was the
Tag
next
that
question,
along.
because how do you
Tag that along.
make that symbiotic?
That was actually a really big conversation through me and my management. He was my manager was like, well, now's the time to put out a single or an album or an EP, or you and Josiah should make a record or something like that. But I felt, to me, that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to take the attention off of this thing that was doing so good for so many. It was helping people. So I didn't want to. So I just didn't do that.
And you're letting it be its true.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally could have. A lot of people could do that with that, but it just didn't feel right to me. You have to be true. You have to do what. Yeah, and it didn't. I didn't want to take the attention off of that and put it on myself when I could do something good for people. And I mean, that's up to everyone, because someone might make a decision where they're like, yeah, I have this awesome single that came out and we're raising money with this single, if that's their choice, and then release something else and then that would work for them totally, and that's totally fine too. But it just wasn't what I wanted to do. It didn't feel.
So, like, for instance, if you actually wrote other material
Yeah.
involved with that type of social
Yeah,
stigma,
maybe then I would have felt
then
better about it if I would have written a record that was kind of on the same topic or raising money too for the same thing. But
at some point, you're gonna release more music under
Yes.
your name.
yeah,
And,
it just wasn't the time.
Right,
to do
right,
it.
and that's totally makes sense. But the other thing is, all those accolades and all that press you got will still be useful to you whenever
Mhm.
you do release something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even saying, you know,
I'm
as
that guy.
featured on CNN or something,
Yeah,
it's
I
not
heard
a bad
that.
line
Yeah,
to
I
have
saw
a press
that.
release, you know?
Yeah.
Or just name recognition.
Well, that's a good question,
No.
because have you put that in a press release?
No,
If you
I
put
had-
all of those people you just named to us in a press release,
And you don't even have to say why, I mean.
but the logic would be in a workshop
Mhm.
that that's priceless, like that's
Yeah.
the best thing you could put.
As a
in
former
press
publicist,
release.
On
I
a
would be
resume?
like,
Right.
we're putting that in the press release, like, you don't
Yeah.
have to go into great detail, but I would be like, because it shows just a level that you're at with
Of
your.
like professionalism.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, and that was
Makes you
one thing.
stand out.
One thing I thought about it was mostly me and Josiah were thinking about just the fact we were doing a good thing and
Right.
raising money, but I was also thinking about how that the experience we got with the interviews and all that was totally priceless. Yeah.
Right.
And yes, it can be used in a press release, but I don't know, that's
Would
not
you
like
think- well,
my,
I was wondering
that's
whether you
not my
did that.
intention.
Right.
That's not something
And I think that happens
Wanna
though a
use.
lot with artists, is that it doesn't have to be your intention, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not using it in any bad way to say, I've been, you know,
Yeah.
their music has been featured on this, you know, you don't even have, you could or could not go into the detail of
Yeah.
why or
Yeah.
how or what. Maybe it gives you another excuse to talk about your other project though again.
Totally, yeah.
So I can keep happy giving good life to your cause. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of different angles, but I think you're right. Being authentic to who you are is always the crux of
I
any
think that is,
good
like, yeah.
PR for your band. Because I think when I
Can we talk about
yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Because you guys, I've always wondered, how do people decide how to pick a PR person? I mean, Goodnight Goldust just said it as though it was the most, you know, you find someone you
No.
want to work with. That's great. That sounds easy, but it's not easy. And the business is full of people who might not have your best intention, all of those things.
Oh, it's spooky
So
out there.
again,
It's spooky.
is there,
Yeah.
is there an easy answer? Do you need a PR person, or you've been on both sides of the story?
I've thought about it, but why don't you go first?
I was just gonna say, if you can do it by yourself, do it as long as you fucking can. Because it's really
expensive.
like, it's expensive and it's also scary. And they're not you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not you.
I think that I absolutely think you should start off doing it by yourself.
Mhm.
Even if you're not the best publicist, I think it makes you answer a bunch of questions before you even go about your career, which I think are important, and every artist should know the answers to. Is like,
Mhm.
what makes my music special? How do I talk about my music? All
Yeah.
those things are things you're going to have to do, whether you're booking, whether you're just being interviewed.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're writing about your music, you need to be able to tell someone and describe in words what you do and what makes your music unique. And I think that should be an exercise everyone does, whether you hire a publicist or not.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing. And also it gives you an appreciation, even if you later, your career takes off and you're like, oh great, I can afford it and I hate doing PR, I can afford a publicist, this is great. If you know what the job is you're hiring someone for, you're gonna hire a better publicist. And there's a lot of, as Lydia said, there's a lot of scary, not reputable publicists out there. Some of them have been doing it a long time, and I'm amazed they're still getting paid to do their work, because I have a lot of opinions. I've hired freelance publicists. I did it for the record label, and there's some really great ones out there. There's some really awful ones out there, and then there's people who are good but not worth the money you're paying them. So I think the number one thing, if you get to that point where you're like, I did this great Kickstarter, I can afford a publicist or a radio promoter, I would say not only do your research on that person, like what other projects have they worked, but talk to the artists who they've actually worked with. Because sometimes they might have represented an artist for one project and the artist had a bad experience and they can still say they worked with that artist. The artist will say, oh yeah, I'll never work with them again. And get referrals from people you trust.
I was going to say, I'm now shocked. I have never thought about this before, but nobody has ever come to ask me, should I use this public
Really?
relations person?
Really?
Now, when you
Like
think
a radio
about it,
promoter or anything?
yeah, I'm the person that
It gets pitched to.
gets pitched to, so you would
Yeah.
think,
And I bet you have opinions of.
yes.
So apparently.
I'll be
if you're-
contacted. I'll be contacted. No.
No, I mean, maybe there's a,
Yeah, asking media
unwritten
people
law
is a
that
great thing
in
too.
terms of.
Truly,
things.
yeah.
Sorry?
I was gonna say, asking artists, but also asking media, because I think they have two very different perspectives. There's some artists who are like, yeah, I got a lot of press out of it, but I hated working with them, right? Or it can be vice versa, where like the media might love the publicist, but the artist didn't. Or sometimes it's vice versa. They're really good at like, they know the artist is paying their bills, so they're really good at like talking up all the work they've been doing, but if you actually talk to one of the writers or DJs they've been promoting to, they're like, oh, that person was horrible to work with. I'd asked them for stuff and they didn't get back to me. I wanted to set up an interview and they just dropped the ball.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, some of it is whether they deliver the goods, right? Whether they can do the job. The other is how they do their job. And I would argue that how they do their job is just as, if not more important than what they get.
Yeah, no.
Exactly.
Because they're representing you just the way a booking agent or manager would, and nothing can hurt your reputation more than if you work with someone who's has a bad reputation in the industry. And getting back to your point, Lydia, about like doing it for yourself. I mean, that's the thing. It's like working with a publicist who also gets your music, not just who's a high-end publicist. I mean, maybe they're great at their job, but they might not get your music. You know what I mean? Maybe they work 100 different projects, and you know, they know they can get some stuff for you, and maybe you know they can get some stuff, but do they actually, are they passionate about it? Do they really get you? Do they get what you want to talk about, what you don't want to talk about in interviews? Because one of the things you should be able to do with a publicist is talk about, like if you're promoting an album or a single, and you hopefully are having a long conversation about it with your publicist about like, what is this about? Publicists should be asking questions before you even write the press materials. You want to know, what is the story? What is it that you feel comfortable talking about? What's in your bio? Because your bio should only have stuff that you're willing to talk about in an interview. So the publicist might be really creative and be like, oh, I want to talk about the single, maybe it's called that side. But you're like, I actually don't ever want to talk about that in an interview.
Please let me live it down.
So, but like, if they don't get that, then you're not going to be happy because you're going to be asked all the time in these radio interviews about a song you don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, I think working with someone that gets your music or gets you as a human being.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely worth it to shop around for a long time, like even if it's years, for someone that you can work with and they want to work with you, and you guys go on some lunch dates and you like hang out, you go on picnics, you really get to know each other.
Long walks on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. and then you marry. Then you sign the.
Well, you can also do short-term projects. That's the other thing. I mean, a lot of people don't have the same publicist for life, and that's fine. Sometimes there might be a publicist that's good for just one project. You're like, I'm now going to be this new album I'm doing is a jazz project, but I've been a singer-songwriter, and I need someone who just knows the jazz world, and I just need them to have the right ins and get my music, and they're professional. That's all I really need, like a 6-month contract or something simple.
So you do sign, that was my question.
Oh, yeah.
Like predetermined.
Unless they're like an unpaid intern volunteer, I would say yes.
And then you might want one too, right?
Yeah, maybe. At least have some agreement in writing, even if it's an email exchange of like what expectations are, so you know whether they're being met. But yeah, I would say you definitely want a contract. You want to be clear what you're paying for. Sometimes with a radio promoter, they might be like, oh, it's like $3,000 to work this whole like album release or the album launch or life of release or however they're categorizing it. And you're like, okay, that sounds doable. I have $3,000, but what they didn't tell you is, oh, but you need to send out all the CDs. You know, like that's an extra expense. So making sure that that's clear, like who's sending out. Am I also paying for like the labels and am I creating the labels, or is that something you're doing? And you know, how's the actual physical mailing going to happen if there is a physical mailing? So there's a lot of other weird gray area that you just want to make sure is like spelled out, and how long they're working, and what you're expecting out of them. Like, are you expecting weekly
Which
reports?
is knowing what you expect out of yourself too before you talk to them, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would argue, coming from the radio point of view, I don't know if I'm as old school as it gets in radio, and I'm starting to think the CDs are on the way out, guys. You know, and it's interesting to hear bands like Goodnight Again went through all of the math of making that many CDs, and I'm not sure how that can be justifiable these days, and especially when I think that people are paying thousands of dollars to have anyone, even if they do a good job, send all of those CDs around to radio right now, because I know working in the industry that, I mean, we get sent still so many that only a really small percentage of them get paid attention to, just because of the logistics of the problem. Like, we have so much, so how can we, and our filters are publicists to a certain extent, record labels, other media, you know, all of that thing, there is a filter. But when I think of how many CDs, you know, individuals have gone through, whether it's getting a grant or working extra hours, to put, I don't know if I could justify that to a band if, and I'm only saying if, the main thing you're doing is making those CDs to send to radio stations. Because
I agree with that, but I will say that every media professional and it's kind of, we're in this awkward stage because it's not, everyone is so individualized. Like, even 4 years ago when I was still working at the record label and running their like PR campaigns, it was pretty split. We still sent out mostly CDs, but we had a digital list too. And some people wanted both. And some people just wanted digital, and some people just wanted CD, and some, And so we had, in our database, we had all these different categories for how we, like, and obviously it doesn't cost to send it digitally, but then we'd have also do physical mailings, or sometimes people would want digital, but then if they liked it, they want physical. And so it was like, but the hard part is that's the trick with PR in general, is like knowing, going back to the research, is like knowing who the humans are at the other end, not just the business, but like who's the human at the other end who's gonna get this music or press release, and how do they want it, what are they interested in, and trying to tailor it to them as much as you can. Now, if you're just working on a local level, it's not that hard to do. Like, have just your Google contacts. You can make notes of like Mark.
This is my friend.
Yeah, exactly. This person, this person wants CDs. This person wants a phone call. This person, you know, only does Facebook Messenger or smoke signals or whatever, and then figuring that out. I mean, on a local level, it's not that hard because there might only be like 20 people you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It gets harder when you're dealing on a macro level, but I mean, I agree that it's a huge expense. I mean, how much money gets spent sending out CDs?
Yeah, if you're just sending them out.
Oh yeah.
Are you seeing download cards more then? Is that kind of what?
Download is how we get most of our music.
But I would say not even the card. I would just say sending the link is easier for media people.
SoundCloud and all of that. But I mean, I think, again, that's probably in the database of record labels now. It's like, which
platform. I mean, that's the other tough thing.
Use, or which platform do you use?
Well, the indie artist has so much available to them.
Yeah.
You know.
That's true.
You know, and we talked about expense with recording, but a lot of people are recording at home, and more and more software is available to recording studios.
Yeah, that's true. It is. But the caveat, and what I didn't mean to say is, because I am still buying CDs, I don't want the CD to die. It's, why are you making them? Now, if you're making them to sell to fans, that makes total sense, and it might still be a viable revenue stream, depending on your fan base, really.
Yeah, genre.
I would just hate to think that there's people making thousands of CDs literally to just throw off an abyss and regular promotion, because that's what most of it is.
I would agree with that.
Wow, yeah.
I would agree with that.
I mean, we seriously have a landfill problem with the CDs we get sent, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
let's-
just to
let's
give an
say that.
idea.
down the stream, there's all those individuals who
Yeah.
don't
And
all
it
have
is
those
heartbreaking. I
experiences.
mean, I just host a weekly specialty show on a small community radio station, so I don't get nearly the volume that the current does. I have a very specific
But you've got
genre.
history in too. And so
Right,
that's
and
what
I
we
get,
build up.
I get more CDs than I can listen to,
Yeah.
and I have like a relatively small show, so, and I feel bad because I know a lot of these artists are doing, because these are, well, a lot of them are independent artists, singer-songwriters, and they're, yeah, they're sending stuff out, and again, sometimes it's not even the right genre, and I feel bad. Luckily, I can pass it off sometimes to other DJs who I think might be interested in it, and
But
like,
they're probably
Right.
also overloaded.
right, exactly. So it's like I feel bad. Every once in a while, I actually have to do a purge sometimes of like, I have so many CDs in my house, right? And I try and get to all of them, but then there's been CDs I'm like, this is like a couple years old. They've never followed up with me, and they've never played in town.
Right.
And I don't know anything about them. Like I've never heard the artist, the label. You know, there's no connection at all.
Yeah.
And it might be good, but after a while, I'm like, I can't just have these things accumulate in my house. Like, I'm gonna become a hoarder, and I don't really want that. But, so, one thing I would say that you can do, if you are sending CDs, or maybe you send a digital link or an email out to someone, is follow up. It's the most important thing you can do, because if someone sends me an email, then I will at least look for the
Yeah.
CD. I'll do the search through my email to make sure I haven't missed it. And especially if someone says, I have a show in town, or, you
Yes,
know.
I was going to say that, to me, the best promotional tool is, and again, I'm old school, but it's still the performance.
Mhm.
You know, unless your Aphex twin who can sit in his bedroom and make whatever he wants now, you know, and he's attained that level. But I think that music, going back to authenticity, I think it's all about connection. And
Totally.
the live experience is where it's bought and sold. There's no better promotional. I don't think we've ever played a breaking band on the Current without knowing that they play shows and they get rebooked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the other thing. When promotional people are telling you, we'll send you all the CDs, but just getting the CD is never going to get your music onto the air. There has to be another reason. For example, the easiest example is the gig list. Every night I pick one song to play by a band who's usually coming the next night or 2 nights ahead. And that is where I play most of the new local bands like Goodnight Gold Dust.
Mhm.
And it might only be one or twice, but it's because they're playing a show.
Right.
And that's why I choose it. It's not because I go through the 25 CDs I got that week and figure out that this is the best CD. I can't do that. There's just not enough time. So you've got to have another reason. Whether
Yeah.
it's going viral, you know, because we're ingesting media all the time, whether it's you've done something for a cause, that's often the case, or whether it's just coming through town. I can't name a successful band that can't tour. Now, obviously, we could get into the downside of that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that is very, very hard work, but, you know,
Especially if you're a local band, you probably are playing locally, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. But I would say the same is true. I know we've been talking a lot about radio for obvious reasons, because we all have radio connections. But I would say for like print media or blogs or television, all the same thing applies. I mean, they're interested in local. I mean, the only reason local media still exists is because of local events. People want to know what's happening in their backyard on a micro level that you're not going to get from a Clear Channel or like CNN.com. You want to know what's happening in your backyard. What can I?
No disrespect.
What shows? Yeah, exactly. But you know, they want to know what's happening down the block from them. You know, and one of the things I found from these Caravan du Nord tours is that you know, the daily papers and the local radio stations that maybe they only play classic rock, but they all have calendars of local events that are happening right in town, and that's why they still have a local station and they're not just piping it in. It's because people want those local connections, and that's what's keeping like newspapers alive, even in major metro areas. So
It's community.
yeah,
It's
and
your
people want
community.
that connection,
That's
and it
all
gives
we
them an
all want.
excuse to why should I cover this album now? And it's like, oh, because they have a show. I mean, I think that's the other reason, is giving media a reason of why it's not just worthy art, but why it needs to be covered right now.
Yeah.
And that's what an event does. It tells you.
The flip side of that is, and I have to tell this, but we need more input from you, Lydia. It's
Sorry,
critical.
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
But the flip side is, your fans and best intentions, your family, the people who you've won over first, want to create that extra story. Like you were saying, there's got to be another story. In radio terms, people think that's spamming the station with requests. They think that if a radio station sees 25 requests for the same song within the same day, they're going to have to play it because it's a story.
Yeah.
No, your band is never going to get played. And I don't mean that one song, I mean never. And I'm serious about this. The worst, you all know spam, we detest spam. So if somebody has instigated their fan base to spam the radio station, they're dead in the water as far as we're concerned. I've never seen anybody overcome that. I've never seen a band go to success who spammed me in the request box. And it happens, I have to tell you, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We have one right now where they're obviously, and unless they're hackers, it's a different name every time, but it's the same band, and it's getting to be hundreds within the same week. Now you could
Is that
think,
right? Wow.
So
you
it's
could
also
think
a waste
that's,
of time.
you know, with crowdfunding,
Yeah.
I can see the impetus
Oh.
of people think, this is what I can do for my favorite musician. But
Yeah.
it's completely backfires on you.
No,
So-
one of the worst mistakes I ever made as a young musician, I called into the Current.
Chris, is your son?
I requested my own band, but I did it in an accent. I think it was David Campbell. He goes, "Lydia, are you actually requesting your own band?" And I said, "Yeah," and hung up.
That's so great. I love that he recognized your voice.
He did. I really
even
was-
with your accent.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, hello, can you play Vanillos, please?" It was the worst thing I ever did.
Maybe
And
you
no,
did.
I was in trouble with him. I think
Oh, yeah,
later
totally.
it was
I
just
can
like,
totally
you,
understand.
yeah,
I totally
you're just an
understand.
idiot. You're an idiot. Don't do that.
Have some respect.
Yeah, just never, don't do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get your friends to do it.
Well, and
too.
definitely don't do it
Exactly.
publicly on social media, because I've also seen that happen on my show too, where someone actually will do a post on Facebook, like, request my song on,
Yeah.
like, Women Folk. I'm like, are you kidding? Well, first of all, that's not how my show works. I get to play whatever I want, whenever
Yeah.
I want. So
Yeah.
right now, you're just kind of annoying me.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna do it.
I think
'Cause I'm
I think the thing that speaks for itself the most is how many people you get to your gig. Is kind of
Totally.
that's kind of
That's
it.
the benchmark.
That's totally the thing, and you know you're gonna get less gigs when your draw starts dwindling, and then you gotta make new songs. That's